This is the Wrestling Old Head. You have entered the portal of pro wrestling.
What the world is watching.
Saturday night is going to be a busy night for professional wrestling fans. You have a evening WWE pay-per-view, the inaugural WrestlePalooza, which will be broadcast through ESPN via the ESPN Plus app. And in the early afternoon, AEW will put on their 7th annual, or is it the 6th annual, AEW All Out pay-per-view extravaganza. They will be in Toronto, Ontario, Canada at the Scotiabank Arena. The last time AEW was in Canada for a pay-per-view was Forbidden Door 2023. We got a lot to talk about with this pay-per-view, and we've got 10 matches to break down like a shotgun, so let's get right into it. If you listen to the media call from Tony Khan, this is being recorded, by the way, on September the 18th. And earlier today, Tony Khan had a media call where he answered questions from the press. And one thing that he disclosed in front of this media call was that the opening match for All Out will be Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. All in all, you're just another Cage with no Cope. That didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to work out, but here we are, you know. And they're going to be wrestling FTR. This is a dream match in many circles, in many spaces on the internet. Fans have been expecting this match for a long time. They have been theorizing, fantasy booking, if you will, when this match was going to take place. We will finally get this match. This is the second time that Cage and Copeland have teamed up in AEW. They were a part of the tag team at the last AEW pay-per-view. They beat Kip Sabian and Luchasaurus, a.k.a. Killswitch, who was filling in for an injured Nick Wayne. Cage and Cope, will they work as a tag team? Will they coexist? FTR, they have been doing a great job getting under the skin of the wrestling fans in attendance at AEW pay-per-views, and they have also had a long-standing, long-term storytelling feud with security. I mean, even the security that walked to the ring with them to protect them, they were attacked. It's hilarious, this feud with FTR and security. But in all seriousness, opening the show with this type of match is really going to set the tone for the spectacular, for this event. FTR and Cope and Cage, there's a lot of history there. They have done a great job with video packages. They have done a great job to build up to this match with promos, with being held back by security. There's a lot of tension going in. And really, there's not a whole lot that can stem. There's not a whole lot that points to a definitive winner here. And let me explain. FTR. Now, FTR can win this and move on to Tag Team Championship Gold. Maybe Cope and Cage do not get along. Maybe they do not have the chemistry, and maybe they have to work. Maybe they have to go through promo videos and video packages of them training and trying to get on the same page. These are things that they can establish before we get a Cope Cage FTR 2. They can stretch this thing out. It doesn't always just have to be a one and done. Now, AEW, if they're smart with that, they'll look towards avenues that keep Cope and Cage in tag team action and also keep FTR circling around. Whether it is a win by nefarious means, a disqualification, whatever goes on, they can stretch this out. And remember, this is the first ever meeting between Cope Cage and FTR. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the last. Now, as far as my prediction goes, I am choosing Cope and Cage to win here. I think there is a lot to be said about the tag team division and it being revamped currently, and I believe that we will see the Young Bucks at some point win the AEW World Tag Team Championship. I think that the Young Bucks in a first ever match with Cope and Cage would be huge. And I've heard this in other avenues. I've heard this. JD from NY206 has spoken about this before. I definitely had the same idea. I think that with the Young Bucks coming back into their own and basically like turning into Happy Corbin, where they're getting money and they're getting back on their feet here and, you know, they're building themselves back up, I definitely see that they're going to make a run for the tag team titles. And we'll get into the Young Bucks a little bit later because there is a match involving the Young Bucks later on in the show. But then you have FTR, you have Cope and Cage, you have the Hurt Syndicate, you have Bro Dito, you have Jet Speed. Okay, you have the Gates of Agony. Is that what they're called? I believe that's what they're called. GOA. So you have tag teams that are circling around this division that can really be prompted up and built. I would love to see Max Caster and Anthony Bowens reunite as a tag team and reform the Acclaimed, bring Billy Gunn back. I think there's a little bit more juice to squeeze out of that tag team. That's just my opinion. And if you've been paying attention to Collision, Jerry Lynn is also an advocate for the Acclaimed. He believes they need to work together again as well. So if you add all of those tag teams up, I think you have a bolstered tag division with a lot of healthy tag teams in there. And Young Bucks having another reign, FTR having another reign is not out of the question if you were to do that. However, I am going with Cope and Cage because I do believe you eventually get Cope and Cage challenging for the tag team champions. And I do believe that we will either see FTR or the Bucks with those tag team titles. So Cope and Cage get the win here. I wouldn't be surprised if you see FTR get revenge in some sort of a fashion, but I also wouldn't be surprised if you see FTR actually sneak out a win here. So I would keep your eyes on that. I mean, they lost to Bro Dito. Remember that. They lost to Bro Dito, and they lost their tag title opportunity. I would not be shocked if FTR walks out victorious, but I am going to go with a safe pick and pick Cope and Cage. In a six-man tag team match, the Hurt Syndicate, which is Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP, battle Ricochet and GOA, Bishop Kaun and Toa Liona. Toa Liona and Bobby Lashley battled on Dynamite this past Wednesday. Bobby Lashley got the win. It was a hard-fought match. It was a big, meaty, slapping meat fiesta. They were really throwing bows. They were throwing hammers. It was a really good, fast-paced 9-minute match. Now, Go Home Math would insinuate that Ricochet and GOA are going to win here. Also, you have MVP that is a part of this six-man. He is usually a manager in this regard, but he's a tough cookie, man, and the guy can still go in the ring. I think there has been a lot of rumor recently of the Hurt Syndicate getting a new member, so MVP doesn't always have to come off the bench, and that he can, remain in his duties as an liaison, a manager, an agent, if you will, for the Hurt Syndicate. I think there was a couple of names that when I started to see these rumors and the innuendo going behind that, where I was throwing out some names off the top of my head, and I've got Kevin Knight and Will Hobbs, good old Willie Hobbs, Powerhouse Hobbs. Now, Hobbs has been doing okay with the ops. I like Hobbs better as a heel, but I like most wrestlers better as a heel. I think they work better. I think they get to come into their own, so when they become a face or a fan favorite, I'm going to try not to say heel and face anymore. I'm really going to try to stick to fan favorite or most hated. I'm going to try and stick to that, you guys. This is my New Year's resolution already here in September. I'm already thinking about my New Year's resolution is to not say heel face, is to say fan favorite, most hated. I think it rolls off the tongue a little bit better, and it's not so inside baseball. And, I'm really just a fan, just like you all. I'm not a reporter. I'm not backstage. I'm not getting the scoop or anything like that. So I think I need to speak as such. So I am going to start to say most hated, fan favorite. So with Hobbs as a fan favorite, I think it works to a degree with the ops, but I think he's better as most hated. And I think pitting him with or aligning him with Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin would do wonders for him, as well as having a mouthpiece in MVP to help set things off for him in this new role. I think, and in a suit, I think it would be nice. Another person is Kevin Knight, which I've had interactions online with a few people that have disagreed with me on that, but the basis being that Kevin Knight could be the successor to Cedric Alexander in this regard. He is a high flyer. He has a ton of potential and charisma. I don't know if I would split Jet Speed up this soon, however, but I mean, a match between Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey could be really interesting if Kevin Knight decides to go where the money is and roll with MVP. MVP giving Kevin Knight a card, I think, would be good, and I can actually see it in my head. I can picture it. It makes sense. As far as this match goes in six-man tag team action, I do have Ricochet and GOA coming out victorious here. I think it's a good way to pit to put over the GOA and Ricochet as formidable opponents. Now, it's more than likely going to be nefarious means because Ricochet at this moment is playing a weasel, but GOA are starting to reestablish themselves and look a little bit more dominant than what they've been utilized as in previous AEW and Ring of Honor situations. So I think that the most important thing right now is to get those trios teams over, Ricochet, Toa Leona, and Bishop Khan. I believe that you get them over by getting a win, and maybe MVP takes the fall here. Who knows? I mean, I think it'll stick it to a lot of the people in the rumor mill that are insinuating that MVP has creative control here, and I believe that it'll probably turn the temperature up if he does get pinned to where he's trying to throw the scent off. I can see most people saying that, but this feud can continue. I like what they're doing thus far, and I think that we do see Ricochet and GOA get the victory. So let's move on. Mercedes Moné defends her TBS championship against Riho. I never had a problem with Riho. I know that the popular consensus is to shit all over her, you know. I mean, Jim Cornette has done a fantastic job with that. I mean, he's just knocked it out of the park every time. Every time Riho comes on, he's got something to say about her, and I respect Jim Cornette. I have a lot of love and admiration for Jim Cornette, but Riho, yes, she's undersized and whatnot, but I think in the women's division, most of the women are undersized, and then you get Amazonian women that come after that, but I really don't see a problem with Riho. I think she does what she does really well. She can sell really well, and she makes it believable when she's providing offense for the most part. Now, she's not perfect. I think a good dance partner for her will be Mercedes Moné. Now, do I think Mercedes Moné is going to lose this match? Nah, to quote LA Knight. I don't believe that, and one of the reasons why I don't believe that is because Mercedes Moné is hell-bent on beating the record for the longest reigning TBS champion in AEW, and that is currently held by Jade Cargill, and I believe a few weeks, maybe a couple weeks after Mercedes Moné wins. If it hasn't happened already, then Mercedes Moné will surpass that record and be the longest reigning TBS champion, and I believe that is something that really interests Mercedes Moné, being a collector of world championships all over the independent circuits all over the world, and also to break records statistically. So Mercedes Moné is going to get a win here. I think it's going to be a hard-fought match. I would like to see how their chemistry is in the ring, but I've got Mercedes Moné coming out on top. In a coffin match, Darby Allin battles Jon Moxley. Finally, we get these two in the same ring at the same time with a lot of bitter feelings and hatred towards one another based on a storyline that has progressed based on Darby Allin being taken out and thrown downstairs only to disappear and then climb Mount Everest and eventually return with blood and gore in his mind and hate and revenge in his eyes. So Darby Allin is looking for that revenge. Does he get it against Jon Moxley in this coffin match? That remains to be seen. I would have liked to see this. So I came across this video not too long ago on my Twitter feed, and it was a flaming ring match. There were ropes, additional ropes behind the ropes for the ring, and they were set on fire. And it was Pedro Morales. No, was it Carlos? It was Carlos Colon and I think Pedro Morales. I could be wrong on that, but definitely Carlos Colon was involved in this match. And there was so much intensity and suspense in this type of a match. And I think if anybody can do something like that, it would be Darby Allin and Jon Moxley. I believe this feud is far from over. Now, one of the things that is of note is that Daniel Garcia has officially joined the Death Riders alongside Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, Pac when he comes back from injury, Gabe Kidd, excuse me, who is just a, he's just a mercenary, and Marina Shafir. So, I have this theory that I want to run by you really quick, and I think it is going to play a factor in this match, is that I believe that Daniel Garcia could possibly be infiltrating Death Riders only to destroy them from within. Now, the only reason why I note that as something that is a possibility and could potentially be the longest termed storyline in AEW history If you go back a couple of years, or a year and a half or so, it was Brian Danielson, who was attacked by the Death Riders. Who came to the aid? Well, it was Hook, it was Orange Cassidy, it was Daniel Garcia, and it was Darby Allin. Those four were positioned as the new up-and-coming talent that were going to go after the Death Riders. 3 of those 4 are currently involved in the Death Riders to this day. Darby Allin, who's going to be wrestling Jon Moxley. Hook, who, with help from the Ops, is still gunning after the Death Riders. Orange Cassidy is out injured, but then there's Daniel Garcia. So Daniel Garcia joining the Death Riders is very interesting. And I wonder if what they're going to do is have Daniel Garcia admit that it was a ruse, that he was attempting to destroy the Death Riders from within, and kick off that 4-on-4 feud when Orange Cassidy inevitably returns, so that we can continue that feud, which, like I said, if executed right, could be a long-term storytelling to a T there for AEW. So I got to give them props on that. So like I said, it's just a theory, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, I've got Darby Allin coming out victorious in this match. My heart really wants to say Jon Moxley, because I feel like they're going to stretch this out. But I'm just going to go with Darby Allin. I feel like Darby Allin gets the win here, and then there's some sort of something that happens after that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jon Moxley wins. In a tables and thumbtacks match, TNT, Mark Briscoe battles MJF. Now, MJF can potentially go 0-2 this weekend. He is wrestling Mystico in CMLL on Friday, and then on Saturday he flies in and has to wrestle Mark Briscoe. Now, he also lost previously to Hangman Adam Page, so he could potentially be going 0-3, 0-3. Do you think they're going to do that? Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I do believe Mystico beats MJF on Friday. I do have a hard time believing Mark Briscoe is going to actually come out victorious in this type of match, but then I start to think about it and break it down like a shotgun, like I normally do, and I think about this type of a match, thumbtacks. Not exactly something that I would have expected MJF to get involved with, but here we are. So MJF getting involved in a match that is as bloody and as gruesome as that, I just don't think he's going to come out on top. So I think what we actually see here is MJF losing to Mark Briscoe, and he goes 0-3, 0-3, and hopefully that is the catalyst to send MJF into a stupor and he becomes mad or insane and really changes his demeanor to climb back up to the rankings, where he will inevitably win the AEW World Championship again. But until we get that, I think he's going to have a heck of a time, because he has stretched himself so thin with enemies that he's not going to be able to fend them all off. So I've got Mark Briscoe coming out on top here. Timeless Toni Storm will defend her AEW Women's Championship in a fatal 4-way match with Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, and Tekla. Toni Storm's going to get the victory over this. I think Chris Statlander has an interesting story going on where she's teeter-tottering about the idea to join the Death Riders as well, which is pretty interesting, I must say. Tekla is too busy going after Queen Amanada, and they have been feuding. Seems to me that it's going to be a forever feud. Anytime those girls see each other, it is on sight. You feel me? So you also have Jamie Hayter, who I'm a big fan of Jamie Hayter, and I would love to see her win an AEW World Championship again. She really never lost it the last time she was AEW World Heavyweight Champion. I'm a big fan of the way that she moves in the ring, and I would love to see her get that opportunity to win the AEW World Women's Championship again. However, I just don't think it's the right time. So I think what we do see here is Toni Storm coming out victorious, and hopefully they have someone lined up for her on the other side going into the next pay-per-view. But for now, this match is going to be timeless. Now let's move on. Kazuchika Okada defends his unified AEW championship against Konosuke Takeshita and Mascara Dorada. Mascara Dorada winning on Wednesday at Dynamite really shocked the shit out of me. I really thought Black Taurus would have, I'm sorry. Can't really say that anymore because there is an actual Black Taurus in AAA right now. So I shouldn't say that. Beast Mortos. I thought Beast Mortos was going to win and move on to the pay-per-view, but I guess not. I guess we get Mascara Dorada. Mascara Dorada is pretty much one of the top luchadors in CMLL, and he does a lot of exciting things in the ring. I would recommend going back and watching the match with Mortos. It was actually a really good match. Now, in this, you are teasing the idea of a split between Konosuke Takeshita and Kazuchika Okada. I believe that the stoking of those flames continues in this triple threat match. I don't know if we get a full-on split where Konosuke Takeshita leaves the Callis family, but I believe that you may see Konosuke Takeshita walk out or even refuse a handshake. I think what we're building to is Konosuke Takeshita against Kazuchika Okada in a singles match for that Unified World Championship. So I think they're going to hold off and stretch that as much as they can, which is why they've inserted Dorada into the mix to inevitably take the pinfall. I think Okada pins Dorada, and that really rhymed. That was actually dope. And then Okada wins and tries to celebrate with Konosuke Takeshita, and Konosuke Takeshita will have none of it because maybe Okada low blows him or something to knock him out of the ring so he can get the quick cover. Something like that is going to happen during this match to continuously build between the tension between the Callis family and Konosuke Takeshita, specifically Okada, and then eventually we get that singles match. Big Bill will challenge Eddie Kingston. An open challenge was made from Big Bill to Eddie Kingston, and if you've paid attention to the Tony Khan media call, as I had mentioned earlier, then he did confirm that Eddie Kingston will be there at Scotiabank on Saturday, September the 20th. He will answer the challenge of Big Bill. Now, one of the things that I had been hypothesizing, theorizing, and rumoring about was that we would see Eddie Kingston return, insert himself into the Death Riders program to go after mercenary Gabe Kidd after their match that they had a couple of years back in New Japan Pro Wrestling when it was in the States, and Eddie Kingston got hurt in that match. So I thought he would renew that feud almost instantaneously against Gabe Kidd, but they pivoted and now they've got Big Bill being involved, which I really don't mind that they have Big Bill involved in this and that Eddie Kingston is battling him first, because you don't need to go right to Gabe Kidd and Eddie Kingston. And obviously there are a myriad of different ways that you can go aside from Eddie Kingston returning to battle Big Bill, which was essentially really random, but you know, the buildup is that they both have animosity, they're from New York, etc., etc. But there could have been other ways and other routes that they could have gone here, but they didn't. They're going this route, and I'm really not necessarily mad at it, but it just depends if the Mad King Eddie Kingston is after beating Big Bill, which he is my predictor to win. I predict that Eddie Kingston is going to win here. After he gets that win upon his return, if he beelines straight for Gabe Kidd, that would be interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to that. I hope Eddie Kingston comes back looking better than ever and cuts a promo that is just out of this world, because everybody is on the edge of their seat when Eddie Kingston has a microphone. Now, moving on, we have Bandito. Brodito. Brody King and Bandito defend their AEW World Tag Team Champions in a ladder match, another fatal four-way, against the Young Bucks, Jet Speed, and the Don Callis family, consisting of Josh Alexander and Hechicero. So, Brodito, successfully defended their tag team championships last pay-per-view event last month sometime by beating the Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, and by beating I can't remember the team that FTR. So they got that win. I think here's where they lose, and they don't get pinned, so they can stay strong. And I believe the Young Bucks retrieve those AEW World Tag Team Championships, and I think they win. And I think, like I said earlier in the previous prediction for Cope Cage and FTR, which will open the show, I believe you do build towards that. You build towards a first ever meeting between the Young Bucks and Cope and Cage. You build towards FTR circling around that tag division again. You build towards Hurt Syndicate being upset that they were not pinned at the last pay-per-view. So they should still be tag team champions. So I think you've got a lot of options at your arsenal in this tag division. You can do the Bucks, FTR, Hurt Syndicate, and Brodito. You can do the Bucks, You can do Cope and Cage. You can do Cope and Cage, Hurt Syndicate, FTR, Bucks. You can do all of these different options are at your disposal, and that would be a great Fatal 4-Way tag match to main event a Dynamite at some point. But I think that they move on to the Young Bucks. I think they can still keep Brodito and Brody King strong. But as of now, I've got the Young Bucks coming away victorious. And finally, for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, Kyle Fletcher, the current AEW TNT champion, will challenge Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page, for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. I think this match is going to be really good. I think that there's a lot riding on this match. I think there's a lot of stress and pressure as far as Kyle Fletcher goes to really establish himself as someone that deserves to be in the main event, that deserves to be in a world championship match. I have all the confidence in the world in the young man. I think he is going to do good in this match. I think it'll be a back and forth contest, but seeing Kyle Fletcher being celebrating at the end here, raising both the TNT and world championships in the air, is not something that I expect to happen here. I think he is still too early in his progression to be hot-shotted up to the main event. I think this is, and with all due respect, a little bit of fodder for Hangman Adam Page to get to the next obstacle that he has on the other side. So I do believe it will be a hard-fought match, but I have Hangman Adam Page coming out victorious here. And then I believe you can still move Kyle Fletcher on to Mark Briscoe. He'll still be the TNT champion, so there's still a lot you can do to keep his momentum up. And I believe Hangman Adam Page will move either through the Don Callis family or will find another formidable challenger. And who knows, MJF might still be lurking around. Now, the rule was changed on these gauntlet cash-ins, where MJF cannot do it like it's a Money in the Bank briefcase. He needs at least a week out. So what could happen is he can critically hurt Hangman Adam Page after the match and then challenge an unhealthy Hangman Adam Page for the AEW World Championship. I do see that, and I'm hoping my prayers are answered and we get Alexander Hammerstone involved in this at some point to be the heavy for MJF with the history that those two have. Also, if you've been paying attention to MLW, they had an event, Fightland, and in Fightland, backstage, Hammerstone was talking with MJF. So they are sowing some seeds here. They're planting some seeds, getting us to think about potential Hammerstone involvement, even in the match with Mark Briscoe. But I believe Hammerstone, maybe Richard Holiday. One of my dreams was Wardlow before he got hurt to team with Alexander Hammerstone. I think that would be a beast of a tag team in a division that is filled with a lot more heavyweights. But yeah, I see Hangman Adam Page winning here, and I still think there is room for MJF to get involved, but there's not a whole lot of top heels in AEW right now that are ready for that main event spot, and there is a ton of injuries. So whatever they choose to go, whatever route they choose to go with Hangman Adam Page, I hope it is something that keeps his momentum up and people stop looking to compare his first title reign with the AEW World Championship with his current title reign with the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. All right, so that was it. There are going to be 3, I believe, pre-show matches that are going to be involved at this event. This event is most definitely going to run along and somehow collide with WrestlePalooza, whether it is the opening video package, the national anthem, or the opening match. Somehow we're going to see a head-to-head PLE versus PPV battle between AEW and the WWE. But what's most important, more important than any of that I just threw up on you, is your opinion, because it matters here in the portal of pro wrestling. I would love to know who you think is going to come out on top at AEW All Out. Winners, losers, predictions of what do you think is going to happen post-match, maybe a surprise or two, who's going to return, who is the odds-on favorite to win, maybe who's going to turn heel, all of that stuff. Let me know in the comments section down below. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up, hit the notification bell so that you are alerted anytime the Wrestling Old Head that would be me, pops out of the portal of pro wrestling to drop you with some hotness. So until next time, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Share it. Make sure that it gets out there in the algorithm so people can, have an idea of what the wrestling old head is thinking as far as professional wrestling, something that I've loved since I was 3 years old. All right, you guys, I'm going to get out of here. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.